Hello everyone, welcome to my channel. I want to share with you one of my latest projects. It's a loft bed project that I did for my two middle children who share a bedroom. The design challenge for this project was to make two loft beds with as minimal new materials as possible. I had these low-cost tiered shelves that I bought from a local big box store, and they have lots of toys, and they worked well for storage, so I used those to start with because they are relatively cheap and I had them already. So that was the design challenge that I presented to myself and to their bedroom. I think I spent a total of like $120. Some of those were actually some tools and some cutting discs from my angle grinder and stuff like that, so that's all inclusive. One of the challenges with this type of project is sometimes it takes longer than it would be if I made it from scratch, but the material cost would have been higher. Here you can see I'm making the yoke for what would be the west end of my son's loft bed. I need to make it strong because it's going to be cantilevered out over the edge. It's not supported out on the what would be the northwest corner of it, so it has to be very strong. So I'm currently cutting them together to make them the same on the end before I weld them up. You can see that I using intermittent welds here and then letting it cool and then coming back. So I did the first edge, and then while those are still cooling, I turned it over, and I'm going to do the inside corner, same technique. The intermittent weld technique helps to minimize the expansion and contraction to the structure of your piece. If you just lay down a big, long weld bead, often it, since the steel is hot when you lay it down, it's molten. When it cools, it's going to shrink and it's going to warp your piece. Here is the coupling nut that I used in tandem with a large, I think I don't know if it was a 5/8 or a 1/2 inch washer. That's to go at the bottom of the leg of the shelving unit for my son's loft bed. There'll be a threaded rod, you'll see later, there'll be a threaded rod that goes through and holds that segment of the shelving unit together. Okay, here I'm making the bracket that will be attached to the top of that threaded rod, and I'm using a UV activated resin glue to hold it in place while I weld it. When I go to weld it, those little beads of resin will be just be burned up. So here it's up on the bench, and I'm tack welding it. I would prefer not to use galvanize, but sometimes when you go to the hardware store, that's all that's available to you in certain brackets and things. If I was had a fabrication shop, perhaps I could cut and bend my own brackets, but I don't have that. And again, here at the store, they didn't have just a regular steel 1/4-inch coupler for a pipe, so I had to get a galvanized one. And I'm not welding all the time, so the galvanized is okay. You just need to keep it ventilated, because that the zinc that's on there will produce zinc oxide, and it's poisonous. You just want to keep your facility well ventilated. And here I'm making just a spacer cushion around the coupling nut to keep it centered in the leg of the shelving unit. You can see it demonstrated there. Okay, and now I'm applying a felt glide on the bottom of it so that the steel washer will not scratch the floor that I worked hard to install. So I'm lifting it up to install it, and there it is. Now I'm measuring for how long of the threaded rod I need. There I pointed out that I cut a slot in the end of it, because it is difficult to get that washer and coupling nut completely perpendicular, and it was not quite perpendicular, so when I went to put it in, it kind of was cocked in there, and it was very difficult to do it by hand, so that's what the slot was for. Here is a wall bracket that I'm making to keep the shelving unit against the wall. That was the previous image. And now I'm making a top piece to stiffen the plastic shelf on the top, because when it's cantilevered out like that, the shelf wants to flex in that corner. So I made a square hole for a carriage bolt. And there you can see it demonstrated. Okay, so that carriage bolt goes down. You see that steel is going to help reinforce that plastic, make it stiffer. I don't show when I actually screw the bracket to the wall. Then again, I'm not trying to film every single aspect. It's just some things are implied. And I think coming up here, soon you'll see me demonstrate the strength of that yoke. Now I'm making the east end yoke for the 2x4s that will span the distance for the mattress. Again, I'm using intermittent welds. This is the inside corner now. I can't remember how I did it. If I left on the outside, if I just left the intermittent welds, and then on the inside I just filled in the void gaps there. I think that's all I did. Now I am drilling the holes for the 1.5 number 12 panhead screws that I'm going to use to affix the 2x4s to the yoke. And obviously this is in fast motion. If I left everything real time, this probably would have been, a few hours long. Okay, here, the 2x4s that I actually had to put in the yoke are thicker than the one I used as a spacer when I was welding that yoke together, and so they went in very, very tightly. After it was all done, it was actually kind of nice, but it was very difficult to put them in. So here I'm putting the east bracket on. I'm setting the 2x in place, and you'll notice on that left 2x I carved it out to kind of go around with the curve of that shelf down there. I'm putting the washer and the nut on. I think, yeah, I used a lock washer as well. That yellow tape on that bracket is to keep it from marring the wall from the jostling about when kids get in and out of their loft bed. Okay, now I'm putting the number 12 panhead screws into the 2x on the east end. Sorry, the angle isn't very good there. Should get better. Probably one of the best accessories on the new drills these days is the LED lights. I didn't even realize how awesome that would be until I had one. If you're in a dark corner, you don't need a flashlight. It's got its own light. Okay, here's where I'm demonstrating the strength. You can see the shelf flex a little bit, and I actually addressed that some more, but I wanted the frame of the loft beds to be inset a little bit so that the mattress stuck out about 2 inches, so that when the kids walk by, they would not bang their head or their shoulder on a hard metal corner or something like that, or a hard wooden corner. These legs are ones that I actually made to go on the bottom of the bottom shelf. It just worked out better in this case to make separate legs. I would have liked to buy 1.25 inch furniture grade PVC in a black color, but it just costs too much for this type of project. Here I had already done a bit of work on these yokes for my daughter's bed. You can see those hooks welded on. I just figured I couldn't capture everything. It'd just take way too long to document this. But I had the holes drilled in the steel, and then I laid all those boards out, spaced them out evenly, and then drilled through those holes in the steel into the wood, and then I numbered where each of them went. So if it was taken apart in the future, you could put it back together. So here you'll see me put the screws in on one end. I don't show myself putting them in on the other end because it's identical. There's no reason to show all of that. You see me get it ready, and then I move to the next clip. So here I show it assembled. And I'm pointing out how those go in the outside pockets of the molding of the shelves. Sliding on the mattress. Here's a quick view of it in place. Now I am showing a quick view of the ladder rungs that I'm making for the loft beds. I wasn't sure how I was gonna make ladders when I first started the beds, and I just went ahead and put them together and thought I would figure that out later, and that's what I'm doing. This is actually a humble CNC machine at where I had worked for the last 20 years. my uncle's shop where we make cabinets. I bought a router to make a template and just do it with a handheld plunge router, but time is of the essence, and there was a deadline to get done, so I just went ahead and laid those out on the CNC at the workplace. Here I'm drilling the counterboard hole for what would be the washer and nut for the carriage bolt that's going to go through the rung of the ladder. I'm gonna actually put a carriage bolt through there's going to be a galvanized pipe that goes through that middle rung. That middle hole of the rung. And those other two holes are going to the poles in the shelving unit go through those holes. I probably could have gotten away with just the wood, but I would have had to sand it and finish it in some way so that the kids wouldn't get splinters. This is just standard construction lumber. Here I am going to show a skill I picked up years ago when I used to be into building subwoofer cabinets for cars, and I had done that for a number of friends. I don't know how many years ago now. More than 16 years ago. It's just a fun thing to take a box and carpet it. And I found this exterior grade carpet at the big box store where I usually get my supplies. It was like $12, and it had a nice color and texture to it. I'm kind of an earth tone kind of guy, and heather gray is probably one of my favorite colors. I could have used something, brighter, but if you have, black shelves that you're pairing this with, you don't want to draw attention to the rungs of the ladder. I have already actually glued the underside of that down. I didn't show that part. What I did was I laid the step, the ladder rung down, and just traced it with a Sharpie, and then I took the piece of wood off and just sprayed that, what was in where the Sharpie was, and the piece of wood, and then I laid it down, glued it on, and what you're seeing now is the edges and the top. When you do this kind of, I guess you call it upholstering, it is beneficial if you can find felted carpet, meaning instead of it being woven, it's actually just kind of like machine matted together, because it'll give, like, you can, if you're trying to, like, if you cut a little too much off of something, you can pull it and stretch it, and it'll actually give a bit, and you can kind of bring it back over and fill those little gaps that you kind of miscalculated. Let's just say it's more forgiving. The felted variety of carpet, when you're gluing it down, it works out better. This was one of the first ones I did, and I later developed a different order of how I laid those edges over. In this one, I kind of did all of them up on the vertical edges first and then laid them on the top, whereas later on I did each edge and then shaped it how I wanted it and laid it up on the vertical and over on the top first, and then I go to the next edge or the next segment of the carpet. This worked out okay, but it wasn't as easy as the method I developed later. Most of these things are in this project are common skills that everyone can do. Well, I don't know. Welding isn't that difficult if you know how to set up, if you know the settings for your welder, and if you have a welder, first of all. When I was in school, I took welding class. That was a lot of fun, and I actually took it twice because it was so much fun. I got credit for it twice. The second time I took that welding class, I didn't even study. It was so much fun just to know something well and just come and take the exam and do the labs and build stuff. It was a lot of fun. So I actually have been trained in welding. It's actually at the university where I went to school. That class is actually one you use to be certified, to become a certified welder. I didn't pursue that, but it's the same class, or the same course, I should say. This carpeting technique was, I didn't read a book or anything. It's just taken, your understanding of, or my own understanding of, geometry and just knowing how materials work and the limitations of materials and what you can do with them. Because back when I did this, I didn't really have, there wasn't the internet like it is today. When I was doing this, it was like the late 90s. And I didn't even have a computer till I got into a community college in what would be 1998. 1998 was the first time I ever had a computer. I bought one when I went to when I started into college. So we didn't have YouTube back then. It is interesting to think about that, how fast things have changed with the internet. You didn't have Google. I think Yahoo might have been around, the Yahoo search engine. But back then it was just kind of like there were, basic websites and stuff. You didn't have, I think you had eBay. I think eBay was around. But today you can find a tutorial on everything, and that's just what life was like for me. I had so many curiosities, and I just would dive in. Yeah, you make mistakes, but that's the best way to learn. where other people were afraid to either lose money, and or make a mistake. I was not afraid to make a mistake or lose money if I could learn how to do something. Most people were saving their money. I was investing in tools and materials to build things. And it was an investment in my life, or my skill set, because I still use all those skills pretty much every day. You saw how I glued carpet onto the heads of my carriage bolts, so that when they go in at the last, you won't have this shiny button. You'll have actually a kind of a camouflaged head for those carriage bolts to go in where they go, kind of blend in with the carpet on the ladder rungs. Oh, I think I didn't finish what I was saying, how some of these skills on here are just kind of everyday things, but I did give more emphasis on the welding and the carpeting, because they're not your common everyday skills. And the carpet especially, I thought, someone watching this could glean something from my technique. That's why it's longer than some of the other processes in this video. And keep in mind that this is just one of 4 that I had to do this with. One of 4 ladder rungs. I'm glad I didn't design the ladder with more rungs on it. I would build just about anything for my kids or my wife. It's enjoyable to me, and it allows me to express my love when I build things. But as a parent, you don't always get to have a span of time to complete such projects. It just so happened that I was able to do it this time. There it shows how the carriage bolt looks when it's inserted in. Here, when I first tested the holes around that pipe, they were not this tight. I don't know if just the residue of the contact cement in there made it more difficult to get on. I did clean them out with lacquer thinner before I put them on, but this is showing the 3D printer. I'm printing some inserts to go into the ends of the pipe that I'm using for the central climbing pole for the ladder. I'm pointing out that I didn't show on camera, but I applied contact cement to 2 surfaces, the cork and the insert cap. Be careful doing this kind of thing. You can really cut yourself. That's roughly cut out, and then I took my belt sander, turned it on its top, and you see me dressing down the cork on it. You can see it there. I didn't want these inserts to be too tight when I put them in. when I used the calipers, I calculated it, as right, equal to the inner diameter of the pipe. But when they finished printing, I noticed that they were a little looser than they should be. So here you see me adding some construction adhesive on it as I slide it in, because I want it to stay firmly in the pipe. The blue tape is to keep that polyurethane glue from getting on the surface. That stuff is just so difficult to clean off of anything. You have to use acetone or mineral spirits or something like that to clean it off, and I just didn't want to introduce those fumes into the bedroom. So here you see me reassembling the shelf unit with the ladder in place. I just show this segment because the other one below it is identical. Like I said, I didn't want to make this video too long. Yeah, the holes seemed a little tighter than they were when I first tested it, when I got the rungs off the CNC. And I think when I sprayed the glue, there were some that got down inside, and I did clean it out with lacquer thinner, and I couldn't feel it with my hands, but I think there's just some slight little grippy residue from that glue, and that just made it real difficult to get those on. This is me drilling the hole in the pipe for my son's loft bed. I'm tapping in the carriage bolt right now. And here you see me putting on the washer and the nut. And I went ahead and showed myself putting the carriage bolt and the washers and nut on the top rung on my daughter's ladder. The lighting was better over here, and so I decided to do a second one. And there's an image of the rungs of the ladder with the carriage bolt in place. And here's a quick overview of the ladder itself. And then I wanted to give the kids something, they haven't had, high beds like this, and while they get used to not moving around so much in their beds where they fall off, I made these softer railings, if you want to call them that, because I didn't want to have some kind of rigid railing out there affixed to the under frame that somebody could hit their head on or whatever. So I bought some pool noodles, as some call it, or some call them fun noodles, depending on what store depending on what store you buy them at. They're just a polyethylene foam sleeve, and I actually stitched that webbing through there and made those to go around the bed. And here's my daughter climbing in to show how it works. And that's of the Loft Beds. I appreciate your interest in my videos. Please subscribe and click the bell. See you in the next video.